All right. Just going to go through a few technical points for everybody that's attending. I welcome everybody to our webinar today, Growing Your Business Through Web Accessibility and Compliance, featuring our partners, accessiBe. And just a few kind of touch points here. We are going to do a question and answer at the end of the presentation. There is a QA button at the very bottom of your screen, which you can go ahead and chat us your question, and we'll go ahead and address it again at the very end. During the presentation, everybody will be on mute as we go through the entire presentation here over the next 20 to 30 minutes. So yeah, feel free to send those questions at any time. Again, we'll address them, and then we can have Termly's team as well as accessiBe's team to handle those questions for you. But to go ahead and get started here, appreciate everybody attending. My name is Rafael Reconasciuto. I'm the Director of Marketing and Partnerships here at Termly, and we are so very excited to basically bring accessibility to our customers through our partnership with accessiBe. And the need for transparency and disclosing how your business handles and shares data via privacy policies, terms, consent management, includes the ability for users, all users, including ones with disabilities, to understand and be able to read it. And this is why our two organizations' values are aligned to create a more safer and more accessible web by providing easy to use and affordable solutions for businesses. And so we thank you very much for joining us today. And kind of without further ado, I'd like to introduce and turn over the presentation over to the team over at accessiBe, have them introduce themselves and dive right back into the presentation. So thank you very much, and go ahead, guys.
Thanks so much for having us. Well, I'm Rafi. I do partner success at accessiBe. So I help anybody who needs help getting accessible to get accessible. And I'll turn things over to the great and powerful Josh Basil.
Thank you, Rafi. And so yeah, my name is Josh Basil. I'm the Community Relations Manager here at accessiBe. And my journey into the disability world, it was personal. When I was 18 years old, I was on a family vacation at the beach, and a wave picked me up, dropped me on my head, and slammed me head first against the ocean floor. That day changed everything, and but I haven't let it stop me from moving forward and living a fulfilling life. And since then, I went back to college, went to law school, graduated magna cum laude without ever flipping a page with my fingers, and I've become an active voice in the community to try to break down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. And web accessibility is dear to my heart because the internet is, especially since the pandemic, the internet is such a valuable tool to access the world. So thank you for having me here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. So before we go any further, I want to show you this quick video because it is actually, to our knowledge, the first national ad campaign that features people with disabilities as actors, as writers, directors, filmmakers at every step of the process. So I will let them present it. Give me 2 seconds. I do apologize. I have not used a Mac in many moons, and so I'm still adjusting.
You're unstoppable.
Shoot for the stars.
And we can achieve anything we set our minds to.
We're entrepreneurs,
We are community leaders,
athletes, artists,
organic farmers.
we are mothers and daughters.
unstoppable.
And yet, people with disabilities probably can't use your website.
To buy your shoes, order your food,
Apply for your job.
To use your get insights.
just like everybody else. For millions of Americans.
America.
Like me.
Like
Me. Like me.
The internet is inaccessible.
Hey, if your business has a website, make it accessible.
Unlock web accessibility with accessiBe. It's simple and affordable.
And don't just do it to be compliant.
If it's the right thing to do.
Web accessibility is accessiBe. Start your free trial today.
Thank you. And no, Monday is not related. So we'll just go back to our presentation here. So that was that. And without further ado, I think we'll give you a quick overview of sort of what is accessibility and go through some of the things that everybody's concerned about coming to this webinar to learn about. And then we'll have more of a conversation about it and be happy to take any questions that come up. And like Raphael said, and so strange for me because my name is Rafi too. Definitely feel free to drop those questions anytime. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, are sets of rules, behaviors, code standards, and design guidelines meant to allow people with disabilities to effectively use websites. And the word effectively is important there. It's not equal, not always. I can't give somebody who is 100% blind an equal experience on Netflix, but I can make sure they'll be able to perform all the same actions, extract all the same information, and have an equivalent experience. And you'll see on the right-hand side here all of the laws that are relevant. You have ADA Title III in the US, Section 508 for government agencies in the US and other small subsets of businesses, and then other laws around the world like the AODA in Canada, EN 301549 in the EU, and IS 5568 in Israel. It's actually the most stringent one and the place that we started becoming accessible. So that's why it's still listed there, even though it's a relatively small market. And at the very top, you'll see the WCAG 2.1. This is the most recent level of WCAG that's been released, the guidelines. And like I said, it's the only internationally recognized set of guidelines. So I know all these laws can be a little bit confusing, but what you need to know is that if you're good with the WCAG, you're almost certainly good with whatever law is relevant in your area. This is why the laws make a big difference in the US, because we would love it if business owners did the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But many business owners are genuinely concerned that they're going to get a lawsuit and they're going to have to settle for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. And especially after COVID, those amounts can be putting people into bankruptcy, out of business. And that's not what anybody wants. And by the way, Josh will correct me if I'm wrong here. It's not what people with disabilities want either. And this is why we come out a little bit stronger than most against the sheer volume of demand letters. You can see here, there were almost 300,000 demand letters sent in 2020. There were a little bit more in 2021. This data is a little bit outdated, but the vast majority of people with disabilities, if they come to your e-commerce store and it's not accessible, their instinct is not to find a lawyer and sue you immediately. They're going to find another way to work with you.
People with disabilities come to your website and it's not accessible. They want to come to you and say, "Can you help fix this problem?" We're not trying to destroy a business. There's some drive-by attorneys that exist in the world that their whole purpose is to go and shake down businesses and companies with no intent of even having their websites really be accessible. But persons with disabilities, we just want to access your website and be a customer and be welcomed. And so that's what we would usually ask for.
Yeah, if you can, I'm sure everybody here has seen the meme, the "shut up and take my money" meme. That's basically what's going on with people with disabilities. They want to buy your products. They want to participate in whatever your website offers, but you're not letting them. And we should let them. So that's really what this is about. But again, a lot of business owners, this is the first time they hear about accessibility, because it's not through malice. It's just they might not know they need to be accessible. And if the first time they hear about it is getting a demand letter or a lawsuit, it creates this really negative feeling towards the whole thing. And that's not what we want. We want people to be proactive and to see this as what it is, an opportunity. Because Josh will tell you, and I'm sure he'll cut in here to tell you, that it's a huge opportunity. 26% of American adults live with a disability. There's something like $500 billion a year in disposable income in that community. And people with disabilities are going to be your best advocates and your most loyal customers. Josh, do you want to add a little bit about that?
Yeah, so persons with disabilities, there's a lot of us, and it's just, some ranging from very significant disabilities to other minor disabilities, but 1/4 of the US population. And with persons with disabilities, you mentioned kind of that $500 billion in spending power, but persons with disabilities, it also makes up the disability community, which is a much larger community with a $1.2 trillion market segment. So, and one of the things with people with disabilities, we're natural advocates, natural problem solvers, we're mentors. When we find something that works, we recommend it to our friends, our family, our community members. And when something doesn't work, we let them know as well. So from a company standpoint, being able to be on that right side where you're getting kind of almost natural marketing from a community that's going to like advocate for you when you treat them well. It's a win-win right there. And but yeah, the disability community, like I want to spend my money on to get different information, services, and products. But then when I like hit a wall, like I use a lot of assistive technology. I use my mouth to control my mouth cursor, and sometimes when I tire out, I use the on-screen keyboard to navigate a website, to access menus and drop-down menus. I use voice dictation software to type as fast as I can speak. But if you don't build your website with accessibility, the forms might not be accessible. And I can't put in my name or my credit card information. And then all of a sudden you have to ask for help from a friend or a family member or a caregiver. And not everybody has that readily available. So it's just so important to make sure you bring accessibility, because it's a smart business opportunity. It's not just all about compliance. It's a smart business opportunity. And let us spend money on your site. We want to.
Yeah. You can build an enthusiastic community around your brand like this, and people will want to work with you. Having been a community manager in the blockchain industry, I can tell you it's real hard to build an enthusiastic community around a product. But if you have a community here ready and waiting to be approached. So take the opportunity. And I will say one more thing before we go to the next slide. Don't worry. If you don't have a disability, don't worry. You will. At some point in your life, you're almost certainly going to have a disability, because a lot of people age into them. And that's something a lot of us forget. So everybody is going to be part of this community at some point.
It's not a matter of if, but when. But in many ways, even if it doesn't happen to you, it's going to happen to a friend, a family member, someone you care about. So it's a really smart investment in the future, and a smart investment in the now.
Absolutely. So I work at accessiBe. I'm, of course, going to tell you we're pretty great, but we're not the only option on the market. And you should have a little bit of information about what your options are. General categories, you have accessibility plugins that are automated and free. I'll tell you, my dad told me, you get what you pay for. If it's free, it's probably not going to solve your whole problem. And that's true here as well. Accessibility is not simple. It is not a quick fix, Band-Aid kind of problem. You need a little bit of expertise and a little bit of involvement to fix it. Once you've got that, it doesn't necessarily take development hours every day, but it's not something that you can fix with a free tool. Then you have accessibility services, and these are organizations that have skilled developers that can go into your website and fix it ongoing and make all kinds of changes. And that's great. I'm not going to say anything bad about their skill or ability or their intention. They're doing really important work. The problem is most businesses cannot even come close to affording it, because you're looking at 25, 30 grand to make your average website accessible. And most people are paying like $100, $200 a month for their website. They're not, that kind of money would put them out of business. So we knew at accessiBe that until accessibility was automated, affordable, and simple enough for the average business owner to wrap their head around it, there's no way it could possibly be widespread. And it needs to be widespread. Less than 2% of the internet is accessible right now. So that's why our product is the way it is. We start at less than $50 a month, can make a website accessible in 48 hours or less. And we even rescan every 24 hours so you stay accessible. We are, by the way, #1 right now on planet Earth, which is super exciting. And we work with people with disabilities every day in every step of the process, because like Josh said, this is not just something that you can check the box and not get sued. This is something that we want to be a usability tool more than an accessibility tool, even though I know we haven't really explained those terms so deeply. But usability means that people will be able to use it to actually do things on the web. Accessibility can mean all kinds of things. It can mean you're complying very strictly with what the WCAG says, but that doesn't always mean a real person will be able to use your website. So that's why this is a really important point here. And our vision as a company, because we are a vision-driven company, by the way, our Chief Vision Officer, Michael Hinkson, is also a person with disabilities. He happens to be blind, and he chose that name himself, the title, because you don't need sight to be a visionary. And I do recommend everybody check out his book, Thunderdog. But our vision is to make the entire internet accessible by 2025. And that's a tall order. When I joined this company 3 years ago, we had about 4,000 customers. Now we're coming up on 250,000. It's great. It's crazy growth in 3 years. Yeah. But there's like 1 billion websites in America. We are not going to make all of them accessible on our own. That's why we have an agency partner program that anybody can join, because we want to empower everybody to help everybody else make websites accessible. We don't need to have a monopoly on this. We want everybody to be able to do it. And you know, the number over here on the left, we literally can't update fast enough. So I do apologize, but I think the important thing to show you here is the logos. We have mom and pops all over the United States, Canada, UK, anywhere. We also have some of the biggest companies in the world working with us. And they work with us not because we're the most affordable or we have the best service. They work with us because we're the best fit to provide the accessibility that they need. And we work at every level to make sure that that stays the case. We don't just do the widget. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but we are a holistic sort of full hub of accessibility. If you need consulting, if you need testing, whatever you need, we've got it available. Now, this is something that I think we should really focus on. How do you know if your website's accessible or not? Because we're all talking about it, but most people who are listening probably are not sure right now if your website's accessible. Quick rule of thumb, if you're not sure, 99%, it's not accessible. If you haven't done anything specific to make it accessible, it's almost for sure not. But we created a free tool called ACE to scan any website in about 10, 15 seconds. You can check if you're accessible or not. You'll get a full report, and it'll explain what the issues are and how you can fix them. If you go over here, I invite everybody to scan this QR code. It'll take you right to ACE, and you can scan your website right now. We'll leave it up for a few seconds. Josh, anything you want to add here while we wait on this slide?
So it's just so important when you do you scan this code or go to accessiBe.ace. accessiBe.com/ace. You'll be able to scan your website, and it basically will let you know where you're doing well, but also where you're not doing well. And I feel like so much of advocacy as a disability advocate is about education. You got to know where you are. You got to know what to do to be able to solve that problem. Find the problem and find the solution, and to do something about it.
Awesome. Well, now we get to the litigation support. And I mentioned this a little bit before, but I'll dive into it a little bit deeper because I know, again, business owners are concerned about this, and rightfully so. You guys, you have employees that you have to make sure they're protected and they can stay employed. There are real concerns here. So in the event that any licensee gets a demand letter, a lawsuit, a complaint, anything at all, you let your account manager know, because everybody has a point of contact here at accessiBe. Let us know. We have a whole protocol that we go through, by the way, at no additional cost. It's all included in the initial license cost. And we'll do, number one, a manual audit, because when somebody makes a complaint about your accessibility, they can't just say you have a trash website, even though, maybe that's the case, but they can't say that. They have to make a specific complaint about your accessibility. Maybe you don't have alt text or an ARIA label, or maybe your fonts are off. Who knows? They'll make their complaint. We'll do a manual audit to show that it's not a valid complaint. Then we'll send you a compliance overview that explains every aspect of how our system works. We'll send you a failures request master, which is just a big old spreadsheet where this complainant can log and document any other complaints they might have, and then we can address them the same way. Finally, we'll send you your accessibility statement and your purchase invoice so you can prove when you became accessible, and our suggested response. Now, this is a viciously worded form letter that we have used thousands of times and received dozens of responses, because 99 times out of 100, when we send this whole package of response to somebody who is threatening one of our clients, they don't even respond. They move on to the next victim, because like Josh said, the nicest word I can think of for these attorneys is ambulance chasers. They are really just looking for an opportunity to get a settlement. And it paints the community of people with disabilities in a bad light. And we don't like that. We want people to be accessible because it's the right thing to do, not because they're afraid of being sued. So this is part of why we include this in the cost of every license. We never charge extra for it, because it's part of us doing our part to focus the conversation, or I guess refocus the conversation on doing things the right way. and for the right reasons. This is what I mentioned before, our professional services and solutions. So it's not all about the widget. We do have consultancy. We have web experts that can work with your team to come up with best practices so that going forward, you won't put out websites or blog posts or whatever content that isn't accessible. We can fix your media files, your PDFs, your videos, whatever is needed. So anything you need accessibility wise, just let us know. We have the solution for you. Finally, this is the installation process. It's super, super simple. It shouldn't take you more than 3 or 4 minutes to finish the installation and have it up and running on your website. This is what the widget itself looks like. So it'll have this accessibility interface, and you can see over here, there's all of these different profiles available for different disabilities. And this makes it super, super easy for somebody who, for instance, has a seizure-related disorder to turn off any animations and flashing lights, because you can't see my background now because it's a fake accessiBe background, but I am a huge Pokemon fan, as evidenced by the many Pokemon on my walls. There was an episode of Pokemon in 1997 for the nerds among us, the first appearance of Porygon, the first digital Pokemon, where there were an enormous amount of flashing lights in the intro, and 650 plus American kids were hospitalized that day as a result. So ever since, there have been requirements for warnings before large amounts of flashing lights and animations. Websites, especially e-commerce websites, don't have that. And we all know, hey, if you want your website to convert well, you do need some of that. You need to have a little razzle and dazzle. But that razzle dazzle can be damaging to people with seizure-related disorders. So this profile lets those people turn off any animations immediately. And then that way they'll be safe and they can use your website as they need to. The last thing I will say about this is the entire purpose of this accessibility interface and the tool itself is to give people choices. And I know Josh will want to chime in here on choices for access, but it really is about that. We want to make sure that people can interact with your website however they need to, not just how you planned it out. Josh, can you add a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So you touched on the profile for people with epilepsy. There's one for ADHD for being able to focus better. There's one for vision impairment to make everything boost up with color and saturation, and everything becomes a little bit bigger. You've got ones for cognitive disabilities that allows you to focus on the areas that you need to be able to highlight or click on or read. And then they have ones for blind and mobility disabilities. And that just allows you to have your assistive technology work that much better. And, so much about accessibility is great. Like, I love accessibility because it kind of gets you in the door. So like, let's say I go to a store. If there's accessibility, if there's a ramp and an automatic door, I can get in the door. But then what happens when I get in the store? When I go down the aisles? That's what usability is about. It gives me kind of new abilities to use my technology to access all the different parts of that website and to navigate from the front of the store to the back of the store, and even sometimes go into the back of this to go into like on top of the shelves and explore. So it's like, it's given me superpowers, to tell you the truth. It gives me new abilities that I don't have physically or mentally to be able to better access a website. So it creates better experiences for people, and it's better experiences for all visitors because it gives all visitors choice. So before the pandemic, I would go into work I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and I would take the metro into work some days. And the people, when I get off the train, there's these wheelchair platform lifts that take you up a few flights of stairs to not do the escalator. And more people that use those are people that with parents that have strollers or people that have luggage on wheels. And it's just like that accessibility tool of that platform lift gave more people usability to get from one place to another. It's the same thing about a usability tool on a website. You're giving people choices and you're creating better experiences. And a better experience usually means a happier customer. So it's like, I love to say it, but it's a win-win. I'll keep saying that throughout this presentation. There's so many wins for being able to bring accessibility to the table for yourself, for your website, and for all your customers.
And there's no downside. That's the other thing. With a lot of widgets or add-ons or changes to your website, there's positives and negatives. There's give and take. with accessibility, I don't know, Josh, is there a downside? I can't really think of one.
I think being a part of this now, and rather than making it an afterthought, it's something you're going to end up doing no matter what, because societal changes and are saying that we need to do more around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We can't forget about people, and businesses are having these conversations so much more than ever before. And it's just, are you going to be falling behind the trends? Are you going to get a reputation of someone that doesn't care about all abilities? Doing it now not only will bring more business to you and be a smart business opportunity, but it also protects your reputation in the future, that you were just not going to do this when your hands were forced. The time to do it is now.
Yeah. And if you own a website, you should take this opportunity to look into accessibility and get yourself ahead of the game. If you're an agency owner or work with an agency, this is your opportunity to shine, because very, very few people are offering this when they build websites these days. And inevitably 6 months, a year down the line, the topic comes up, and then it's an awkward conversation for whoever built that website to say, "Oh, I didn't know about that. I'm sorry." Or, "Oh, we couldn't afford to do it at the there's always an excuse. But rather than having to come up with a reason that you didn't do the right thing in the first place, let's just do the right thing in the first place. And get yourself accountable.
And those agencies are truly change makers in my eyes and in my heart. Like, it's being able to have, those personal touches with website owners as they're building it or as they're looking for advice. Like, agencies just really get the message out there, bring awareness, and really have a power to make the internet way more accessible than it otherwise would be, because of the numbers of people that they can reach and the number of websites they can reach.
Absolutely. Because you know what? Not to look down upon any individual website owners. I am a owner of a failed e-commerce store myself, so I'm in no position to speak. But generally, those who own e-commerce stores are experts in what they're selling, but they're not necessarily experts on web stuff. That's why they work with agencies, because they trust the agency to know what's right. And I have this conversation a lot. 10 years ago, when SSL became a requirement that you needed to have a secure website, I was shocked to hear a lot of clients were really pushing back on that, saying, "Well, nobody's trying to hack me. Why do I need security?" "Well, I don't want to pay you an extra $40 a month for it. Let's talk about this next year." Some of those people got hacked. Some of them didn't. But the next year, Google made it a requirement. And now Google will not show your website, even won't let you navigate to a place if you're not secure. And Google is starting to rank for accessibility. And people are starting to judge based on accessibility. As any business, you want to create a positive, enthusiastic community about your brand and about your product. And I can't think of a better way to do it than to get the community of people with disabilities behind you.
And the Access widget, is not only going to be used by people with disabilities, but it's going to be used by all abilities. And once you start opening up the tool and playing around with it, you actually start spending way more time on that website and exploring. And that helps with all the SEO, the dwell times, all of the different markers that Google's looking for to rank you better. So it's great in that respect as well.
Josh, you remind me of a great line that I sometimes use in sales calls, so I'll apologize for recycling it here. But, my grandmother, before she passed away, absolutely loved online shopping, never considered herself to have a disability. But as she got older and older, her eyesight was not as good as it was. She was a little bit tired, didn't have the same mobility. I guarantee you, Josh, if she'd had the option to use accessiBe on the website she was shopping on, make the fonts a little bit bigger, add a night mode, whatever it is, my inheritance would have been even smaller. And really, again, that's what business owners want. They want to take that money. So we're here to help. I think that's pretty much it for the presentation. I'd be very glad to take any questions. Did we forget anything? I hope not.
I don't think we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very comprehensive. Yeah. And before we kind of get, I do have a couple of questions already from the attendees here. We'll get to them really quick, but I just want to wrap up and say thank you very much, Rafi and Josh, for, giving us a good sense of why it's so important to be accessible. And I think, as I mentioned before, I think we've been really excited to launch this partnership with Termly and accessiBe for some time. And I think the values align is the right thing to do. But, again, even from a compliance and data compliance perspective, making sure that privacy policies, terms and conditions, even consent, all these are easily read and understood by ones with disabilities by using your guys' solution. And so I think this aligns really well, and we're looking forward to this being the first step towards overall making sure that we have this available to our customers and vice versa. So thank you so very much. I do have a couple of questions for you. So let me kind of say these out loud, and you guys can answer them live from the platform. So Jackie had sent a question with regards to the slide with regards to the liability that businesses sort of take on. It says, I have come across people in the web industry who are naysayers against using overlay technology like accessiBe, claiming you can still get sued. How would you guys address that?
Well, I'll start and then I'll pass it over to Josh because, again, he is a lawyer. But generally speaking, the United States is wonderful for a lot of reasons, our legal system not necessarily being one of them. Anybody can sue anybody for anything, and nothing can stop you from getting a letter. But the idea that overlays are insufficient to provide accessibility is just debunked at this point, because to my understanding, and I welcome anybody to bring evidence and correct me if that's the case, to my understanding, every time that our tool has been tested in court by a judge, it's been accepted as being more than enough to be accessible. There are certain groups of people who generally work in manual accessibility who want manual accessibility to be the only way to make websites accessible. And we don't disagree with all of their points. We 100% agree that everybody should employ best practices when they're developing new websites and try to build as accessible as possible. But we also understand that this can really put an undue burden on small businesses. And it's not really reasonable to expect them to expend tens of thousands of dollars on accessibility development on a yearly basis, especially when their revenue might be 100, not even profit. So it wouldn't be reasonable to expect that. So I think there's a middle ground. But I would also say, to go back to our litigation support package, we've helped literally thousands of our clients resolve issues like this because we are willing to go through the whole process with you. When somebody makes a complaint, they make a specific complaint, we address that specific complaint. In a couple of cases, they've brought to us real problems and we immediately start working on solving them. Generally, we've got them solved in a couple of hours. And we embrace that very enthusiastically because our product is an AI product, meaning that if you're having a problem on your website, the other 200,000 people using accessiBe are having the same problem. So we need to get that resolved immediately. And when we do, it's solved for everybody and forever. So hopefully that answers it. Josh, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, this is a disruptive technology. It's shaking up the game. And I think a lot of the people that have been in this space for a while think of it as they're going to take away all of our jobs, all of our ability to provide for our families, but that's so far from the truth. Like, there's still hundreds of millions of websites out there that remain inaccessible. And as an advocate with a disability, as a person with a disability, I want accessibility. And I want it on a scalable level. There's just not enough manual coders and specialists in the world to tackle those hundreds of millions of websites. And the best opportunity we have is through technology, especially scalable solutions. And accessiBe, I've tested it. My friends have tested it. I've had so many people in the community test it. It brings way more accessibility and a tremendous amount of usability to the table, which, I'm going to say it again, is a win-win at the end of the day. Like, I'm a big believer in this, and I've put a lot of time and energy to make sure that the world knows that accessiBe and the accessWidget and what we're doing here is helping millions of people across the world.
Thank you. And last thing is that we super encourage everybody to take extra steps beyond just the widget to make sure that you are being usable and accessible. I tell all my clients, listen, you should employ a user test once a year or once a quarter. So a user test is when you have an actual person with disabilities test the website and tell you, does it work as expected? Is there an issue? If you have that and the best widget on the market, it's pretty hard to make an argument that you're not making a reasonable effort. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Jackie just sent a follow-up question, but I'll get to that here in a second. I had a few other kind of comments and things too, but Shauna just said, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you very much for the information, just for some feedback. So thank you very much, Shauna. But I did have a question from Alice. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the first name, but she's from Slovenia and runs a nonprofit website, and education is important to her. And she's wondering, is the solution only in the English language at this point?
No, we support 14 languages right now, and we're always, we've always got more on the roadmap.
That's great. That's great. She did say that if you need help translating Slovenia, that she'd be more than willing to help out. So we'll definitely pass your information on to these guys, and we'll make that happen. So, so that's great. I appreciate that. So Jackie had a follow-up question. It says that, are there any types of website platforms or custom technologies that would not support the integration of accessiBe that you guys are aware of?
No, we work with everybody. If somebody has an issue working with us, they let us know, and we fix it as soon as we can, because we want everybody to be able to use this with as few obstacles as possible.
I don't know what else to say about that, but that it's on your website, so it doesn't tap into like third-party applications. Like it has to be embedded within the website itself. I think that's important to differentiate as well.
For sure. Yeah, I think one of the, just to make a point to that so much of the technologies and platforms that we use from Turnley's side are very similar to what you guys use at accessiBe. And I think that, we deal from our customer service side so many questions about integration and about how does it compatible with, say, WordPress or other different platforms. And so your guys' willingness to work through potential installations and all that stuff too is a huge value add to the customer service and service that you guys provide. And again, one of the reasons why we love this partnership, because we're so aligned with that message and integration too as well. But looks like that wraps up all of our questions. If there's any additional questions or anything else, we'll be following up with an email that includes a link to basically a specific page that allows everybody to have access to a discount as a Turnley customer. So we're really excited to kind of promote that and really push that to you guys so that you guys can try out accessiBe. It also has a link to the ACE scanner. Also, you can go directly to accessiBe, of course, and try that out. But we'll follow up with an email, including the recording of this session. But yeah, overall, if there's any additional questions, feel free to reach back us or reply to that email correspondence. I did actually just get one additional question here, so squeaking in at the last moment. So from a legal point of view, I have to get permission to do this today. You never know when you have to get a knife in the back. That's a great comment, Alex. I appreciate it. So it sounds like she's going to the right people to make that happen. So, but overall, we really appreciate everybody taking the time to do so, especially Rafi and Josh from accessiBe to make that happen. But again, look for that follow-up email with the recording and also the discount code, and we'll go from there. Any last comments, guys?
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on this journey with us. Like, it's making the world more accessible is changing lives. And just thank you, and look forward to getting that 2% to 4% to 5% to 10% to 50% of the internet, and hopefully someday to 100.
Yeah, absolutely. Sentiments shared across the board, no question. All right. Well, thank you again for everybody for attending, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.